All right, here we are.
Awesome.
Big, big sigh.
Big sigh. My
Yeah.
brain is on holiday time. I'm ready for the holidays.
Oh, awesome. I'm not a holidays person myself, but
No. Yeah.
um, no. Here, let me introduce you real quick.
Okay.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ether Flows Healing Podcast. With me today is Seraphina Nightingale.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
I haven't, I
It's
haven't
a
put,
fake
I've
name.
put like
It's not my
0
legal
research.
name, just so everyone knows. But yeah,
Awesome.
that works.
She is a YouTuber. She's a tarot card reader and a channeler. She channels an Andromedan energy named Ariane Ron. Am I
Yep.
right?
You nailed it.
And yeah, and I've seen, I was randomly scrolling on YouTube and I saw this woman's videos and she blew me away with her accuracy, her
Aw.
precision, just her manner of speaking and the way that she comes across with the energies is so spot on and it really resonated with me. So I reached out to her and she agreed to do a show.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
yeah, me too. So let's see, what should we do? Let's start with the background.
For sure.
Where are you from, by the way?
I am from Michigan, Midwest girl.
Shut up. I'm in Michigan too.
I thought I saw that. I can't remember if it was in your email or if your assistant might have mentioned it, but yeah, I thought I saw that. So
That's awesome. I'm right
funny.
next to Lake Superior in the UP.
Oh, I bet you live a fun life. Do you get good internet up there?
No, not really. No, but I
Yeah.
have tons of nature and I have a bunch of dogs and I just go out in nature and interact with the interdimensionals and the nature spirits and everybody. And dude, it's so magical up here. Like best thing I ever did.
I'm sure. I was going to add, now that I know you're in the UP, especially for the audience, the UP is kind of like this more remote area in Michigan. It's like the top part above the mitten. And anytime I've kind of gone around that area, it feels so magical. Like it's just like humming with energy, with land spirits, especially. Have you had any like encounters or like stories with that?
Oh my gosh. I could kind of fill a short book at this point. I'm not going to get into my story as much, but like I started seeing light ships and stuff when I was living in Detroit, and that started about 2019, I want to say. I went to Traverse City with my wife on vacation, and we got an Airbnb off of Lake Michigan, and one of the nights I was there, it was totally clear, and we were literally across the street from the lake, and I was looking off into the lake, and there were some trees in the front, and this huge orb shot out of the trees, and then after that, I saw this light ship kind of come over the top of my head and go straight off over Lake Superior, and it took about 10 minutes. Like it was this huge sparkly one, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck was that? And then came back to Detroit and it followed me. I kept seeing them in my backyard every night. I kept seeing and different ones too. Like I would see triangles and like big orange ones, and it was wild. Like it was, but up here it's gotten even more intense.
I'm sure. There's been a couple of times where I'll be laying in bed and I kind of glance out the window and I see what I think is a star. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. It's acting weird. And then I like get up and run out of bed to go look at it and it's like gone. So I'm like counting down the days, especially working with an Andromedan being. Like, I'm like, I've got my fingers crossed. Like I really do think one of the things we'll see with Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius, especially, is more like disclosure events and like more information about the interdimensional and other extraterrestrial beings that we've interacted with. And I'm very excited about it. It's definitely something I've been geeking out a lot about more.
Well, I mean, I think all you need to do is go out in your backyard. You'll probably see some more stuff. Not right now. I mean, if you're brave, because it's so cold out right now.
So cold. It is really cold. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the more time you spend out there, they can see you. They see you from like, it's crazy. Okay. So here's a great example. So have you ever seen the movie Arrival?
Yes. Oh yes. That's the one where she is gifted the ability to like view through time or whatever. Like there's
Mhm.
like yep, okay.
Yeah. I saw that movie and it was so emotional for me. I felt like it unlocked all this all this DNA. Like I was getting all these downloads and I was getting really emotional. And I went outside right after the movie because I was just like, I started tearing up. I was just like, oh my God, it's so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And as soon as I walk outside, there's a big ass ship right above the house and it like starts blinking at me. And I was like, I love you guys. Thank you. It was
Aww.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, talking about it now, I feel kind of corny, but it was like they can see your frequency wherever you are. Like if you're in your
Interesting.
house or
Yeah.
wherever. I've had them come into my house and just they like show up and they're like,
Really?
all right, let's go. Yeah. I mean, it's in the weird in between space when you're trying to sleep and it's like
Okay. Yep, that makes
all of a,
sense.
I was yeah, I was sleeping in my chair and all of a sudden I saw three little guys walk into the room and they were just like, come on, you're coming with us. And then everything went black. So I don't
Like an
yeah.
astral travel. Okay, that's interesting. One thing I have noticed since I've started working with Ariane Rod is that I get a lot of downloads right in that space, like right in that space
Hmm.
between wake and sleep. It's almost like I don't know how to say this without being like overly dramatic, but it's almost like the world and the universe and this dimension, like everything makes so much more sense. And then I
Yes,
wake up the next morning and I try and remember what I understood, and it's like it slips right through my fingers and it's all gone again.
I know. I used to have, well, I still do every once in a while. When I'm coming back into consciousness, I'll see, my eyes are still closed, but I'm like starting to, come back. Sometimes I'll see a giant white tube above my head, like I'm coming down from the tunnel
Mm,
and I was like, okay, see you guys later. And then other times I'll see these grids, but it's like little grid points and they're all like vibrating really fast. And like,
mm-hmm.
it's so bizarre seeing all of this
Interesting.
like moving sacred geometry and
Yep.
just, yeah, you have all these incredible insights in that
In that
time
space.
period. Yeah, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you know everything. You're like, I'm good. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
great. And then
Mm-hmm.
you
And
wake
it's
up and you're
also
just oh,
like
go ahead.
what's even going on. Yeah, it's like a feeling too is the other thing. Like it's not even thoughts so much. Like it comes through, it kind of feels like thoughts, but it's really like truly, I thought I was misunderstanding when people would talk about a download before. I was like, what are you, a
Mm.
computer? But now I get it. It genuinely does feel like someone has taken information and just popped it into your head and been like, here, figure out language to understand this. And it's very difficult.
And it's also, I've heard other people use this word inner standing as opposed to
Mm,
understanding with logic. It's like your whole body feels it. It like starts
yes.
vibrating, all the
Oof.
cells start vibrating, and yeah, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this video. I was scrolling on YouTube last night, and I have my personal channel, and then I have like the channel for this show, and I get all this random stuff for the show one, and there was a YouTube video that was like, I after my awakening, I want to go back to sleep. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not having fun. I want to go back, and there was
Mm-hmm.
like 8 million views or something on it. I was just like, why? I mean, this sucks sometimes. You have to do a
Yeah.
lot of shadow work. You have to do a lot of inner perspective, introspection and kind of you have to do a lot of transmutation. There's so much gunk, from the
Mm-hmm.
family lines, from, stuff that you inherited. But like at the end of the day, it's amazing. It's amazing what you get to
I know.
experience.
It is
Yeah.
honestly, and I totally empathize with the idea of wanting to go back to sleep. I will say my guides did it. I don't know if it was purely them doing it to me in this way, but I just feel like my awakening journey has happened in stages where
Oh yeah.
like
Me too.
my understanding about what's going on in this dimension, like karmic contracts, manifestation, these types of like more buzzwords that we hear commonly in the spiritual community. I didn't get to understand any of that until I did a lot of the shadow work because and again, I don't know how much this was intentional on behalf of my guides, but it was almost like if they would have showed me any of that prior to me having healed a lot of these past wounds, I would have rejected it.
Mhm.
And I would have been really turned off by a lot of the things that I've kind of come to understand are the way this dimension functions. So I totally empathize with that, but also I empathize with your point of like, this is a ton of fun, because when you do get to that place of like, no one's ever fully done healing. Like we're always doing more transmutation work, as you said, but you do get to a certain point where you're like, hold on, wait a minute. Being here is kind of freaking magical. And whoa, like, whoa.
Yeah. And that's like, I feel like for me anyway, that's one of the best ways to connect to your inner child is to
Mm,
just like, just start using your imagination. I know it sounds silly, but just like go outside and imagine like there's little gnomes and stuff, tunneling around under the trees, and like just start using your imagination, and it will help you connect to your inner child, which helps you connect to a sense of wonder. And like that's kind of how all of this works. It's
yeah.
all it's all through your imagination. Not like
Mm-hmm.
I'm super great at visualizing or anything like that, but I feel like when I go out in the woods and I connect to a family of Sasquatch people and a bunch of other guys. But especially when I connect with them and I feel them giving that love back, it just, man, it's so awesome. It's so
Mm-hmm.
magical. It really
Mm-hmm.
helps. Yeah.
It is.
So
There is this profound feeling of we're not alone on this planet. Like it can be so easy to forget and like to really genuinely believe that humans are like the most advanced there is here. And the more you start to connect with, especially the interdimensional beings, it's just, you really start to feel like you're truly never alone. And there is this very loving, very tangible even presence. Even though like you can't see them, it starts to feel like really tangible. That's something that I've noticed a lot with my guides over the past like year and a half, is like, oh wow, you guys are here, like you're really here, like I can really feel you. And
yeah.
yeah, I love what you said about wonder with your inner child, because how many of us were like little spiritual awakening buds when we were kids, and then how many of us like disconnected from that and lost that fire and that inspiration. And in so many ways I feel like I'm just trying to get back to who I was when I was a kid. Obviously not in all cases, like maybe not with like all, maturity and stuff like that, but that sense of wonder, definitely.
And yeah, and also just like more of an innocence as well,
Mm,
not feeling
mhm.
so like, so jaded, so
Oh,
oh gosh,
yes.
in my pinnacle of sarcasm and cynicism, I think I was in my 20s and my 30s, and holy crap, I can barely remember
Mm,
whole years, like a whole decade even. It just seems like a big gray mist,
mm,
because you have this crummy attitude and this crummy
mhm.
outlook, and it seems like it's hard for you to even experience anything. You kind of just float around half out of your body, like hating everything.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So one of the guides that was like really pivotal for me, and this was actually the guide I worked with when I started my YouTube channel, was the Morrigan. That
Mhm.
comes from Irish mythology. And
I
she's
have a story to tell about the Morrigan with you
okay, I'm very excited.
later.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the memories that I have with this deity, this being, I have so much respect for her. And this was one of the things that was, oh my god, she taught me so much. Like I could write a whole speak about talking or talk about writing a whole book. I could write a whole book on my experience with
Y
her.
Talk
But
about
this
her
is
if
one
you'd
of the
like.
things. What's that?
Oh, go ahead. I would love to hear some stories.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So one of the main things that she taught me and kind of like smacked me upside the face about was my cynicism. I got very heavily identified with a lot of the pain that I experienced as a child. And
Mm,
it makes sense, right? Like there was a ton of grief, a ton of sacred rage that I had to feel. And she helped to facilitate that process. But I got to a point where I was still defining myself based on all of that pain. And she had to kind of come in with a heavy hand. And she didn't tell me. It took me a very long time to figure it out. I missed a lot of signs. There was a lot of back and forth. But the major lesson was like, hey, now is the time that you're going to be defining yourself. Like we keep talking
mhm,
about sovereignty, you and I, her and I. It was like the main word with her. She was like, if you actually want the power of your sovereignty, you have to claim the responsibility of it. And currently, you're stuck wallowing in the past. You're identified with the past, and you gotta you got some work to do, but it's your time, and it's your turn to write your own story. So that was a very pivotal moment for me about a year and a half ago.
So how did you go about that? Let's hear a little bit about that process. Because
Oh my
people,
God.
people talk about shadow work, they talk about
Yeah.
transmuting, karmic gunk.
Mhm.
But I feel like a lot of people kind of are like, I don't even know how to do that. Like,
Like
how do you
what to
do it?
do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'll say is I wish there was like one sentence or one instruction I could give people to make it easy. What I will say is time and time again, what I've learned is that there are parts of me that just want to be heard. So, like a huge part of my shadow work is being confronted with challenges and like emotional triggers, like deep emotional triggers in the here and now, and having a feeling to myself like, hey, I think this is a callback to something that I experienced when I was younger, and getting really curious about that. Asking, this can be done in meditation, just like a random journal prompt that you do. And it also takes a very long time and a lot of honesty and practice, but like really getting curious and really asking your subconscious mind, your inner child, like what's going on here, why are we reacting to this current situation the way that we are reacting?
Mhm.
What do you need me to bear witness to? What do you need me to see, and in order for you to be able to heal? And I've gotten to so many places where I'm like, I need to do something with this shadow, and a lot of the times it's honestly just listening and holding space for that. I know that holding space is kind of like a goofy thing that we say now, but genuinely like being there for yourself and giving yourself a container to like fully grieve the things that you've experienced. And so that is kind of the short of it. Shadow work is very, very messy. What's kind of like your process with it?
Oh, you're so right. Geez. So let me see. My first couple of years in like the latest, like you were saying, it comes in stages, right? Like when you're a kid, you have all of these incredible experiences, or you talk to, people who nobody sees, or, whatever. And then you shut it down, and then you go throughout your growing up, your childhood, your teenage years and everything, kind of just, at least for me, this is what I did. Just rejecting the whole lot of it, like
Yes.
there was no God, there's no this, there's no that. When you die, that's it. There's nothing, like
Mm-hmm.
even believing that is like so stupid and whatever. And just turning into this super cynical, like jaded, gross
Yes.
person who I would not want to associate with anymore. And then after a series of like really, 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 really dark events and like periods in my life where I finally, man, I swear my guides must, I don't even, like, so many 2x4s. Like, I feel like it was like so many universal 2x4s, and I still wasn't listening. And I went through, I finally had this like this incredible Kundalini awakening. And I, even after that happened, I assumed it was a psychotic episode, and I shoved it to the back of my mind. I was like, nope, we're not going to think about this. And I went through another few years of just like being on autopilot and just working too much, treating my body like crap, and just not. And once again, that feeling bubbled up that like, oh, you need to do something. You're late. You're late for a very important date,
Oh,
like
yes. Yep.
just this like pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting migraines, and I started getting all these health issues. And finally, after exhausting the medical field with my mystery illnesses, I started getting energy work done. And after about 4 sessions, I would say my body just kind of opened up, and like my chakras were starting to clear, and I could feel all this energy. And it was really great, but I had no idea what to do with it.
Right.
And all I wanted to do was escape. That's it. I just wanted,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was half in my body for pretty much my entire life anyway,
Yes.
but I just wanted to kind of speed to the end, and float on the lotus leaf, float
Mm-hmm.
on the lotus flower and be in bliss and have it be done with.
And be done with
And
this dimension. Yeah.
yeah, just be done with it, you know, like yeah, that's all I wanted. And so I watched a ton of YouTube people who are like, I feel like the new age spiritual community on social media, it can be very toxic and
Hmm.
can perpetuate a lot of like co-opted information that's not correct. And so you really have to use your discernment.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
I spent a couple of years doing that, you know, just like floating around, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I believe. I don't know who I am. And I finally found this woman who I did a mentorship with. Her name's Aisha Love. And she introduced me
Wait,
to shadow work.
I think I know who
You
that.
know
I think I
Asia?
know who that is. Maybe I do,
Yeah.
maybe I don't. But
She's
yeah, that
amazing.
name
She's an
does.
amazing person. I've
Yeah.
done a I've done one interview with her. We're gonna do another one next month.
Okay, that
But
might be what I remember it from. Interesting.
okay. That's funny. That's awesome.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a 5-month mentorship where it was like 2-hour sessions every week, deep dive into shadow, into like your ancestral lines, and just, oh my gosh, it was incredible, but at the same time, it was one of the most painful experiences I've
Hmm.
ever had, because I had to face the fact that you like you don't know who you are. You really don't. Like
Yeah.
I'm 47 and I had no idea up until, I don't know, maybe even a couple weeks ago, like
Hmm.
who and what I really am, what my beliefs are, you know, what my truth is. And yeah, it was really hard to reckon with. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there was lot of temper tantrums, and my inner teen that never
Oh,
got listened to came out big time.
big
And,
time. Yeah, I had a very similar experience with the inner teen, and again also too, like the positive side of it. Obviously the negative side is maybe the temper tantrums, and but the positive side was like just releasing that rage and getting it out of my
yes,
system and giving it a
and
space to
seeing
exist.
it for what
Hmm.
it is. It's
Yeah.
You're seeing it for yourself not being respected, for yourself not being heard, for yourself not feeling loved. And it's like, once you see that, and it's kind of a formula. I almost like I would okay, so it's kind of like what you call the mirror. Like, so say you're walking down the street and you see a person on the other side of the street and you say that person's gross for whatever
Mm.
reason. Like, I don't
Hmm.
want to talk to that person. It's always a reflection of something you don't want to see within yourself. That's the
Yes.
formula, and I totally
Yes.
hacked it. I mean, I didn't hack it, but I figured out pretty quickly that's what it was. And after I figured that out, it was like it was a wall of shadow, like mountains of shadow all around
Hmm.
me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a lot of work to do." But
It becomes overwhelming,
it's
but
like a
also really
lifestyle.
exciting. Like it's both of
Yeah,
those two feelings. And also
exactly.
all of life changes because I don't remember the exact moment this happened to me, but your life goes from being this just like humdrum, like wake up, go to school, do your job, do your stuff on the weekends, from that to like, no, literally every single thing I do, every encounter I have, every experience
Yeah,
that I experience is holding value and meaning and significance for being here.
right.
I completely related to what you were saying when you said that you just wanted to be done being on this planet. That was me for the longest time.
Yeah.
When I was younger, to kind of get into my story here, and I do have notes if you see me glancing off to the side. I took some notes just
Oh,
so I
no.
didn't miss anything.
Aw, that's sweet.
Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, I remember being young and having this profound feeling that like things aren't right here. This isn't correct. Like the way that humans adopt this sort of monotonous cookie cutter way of being, I was just like, something about this is not okay. It's not right. There's something missing. It
Yeah.
was really the main feeling. Like there is something missing. And also I did not want to do it. Like, and anytime it was, whether it was school, career, anything, I was like, this, I just don't want to do this. This doesn't spark
Me
joy
too.
in me. And I always had this feeling there is more to life. I was always drawn towards magic. I called myself a witch for quite a few years. I'm not doing labels, but whatever works. I think I still do have some practices that would be considered witchcraft. But even when I was younger, I was always drawn to that. There was always something about the spiritual specifically. It wasn't just like the aesthetics of magic, although I was a Harry Potter girl for sure. But it wasn't just like the aesthetics of it, although I did find that beautiful. It was like the deeper, like there's something weirder than this. I also went through a period in my teenage years where I was like, being human doesn't make any sense. Like, we're highly evolved apes on a rock in space, and we don't know what space is, and we don't know if space starts or ends, and we don't know how it got here. And like, none of this makes any sense. And it was this kind of like dabbling with existentialism a little bit without fully going over the deep end. Luckily, it was touch and go a few times. But I was always really drawn to like the mystery of it. And I was quite young when I started to hear from my spirit guides. I want to say like maybe like 5th or 6th grade. And they didn't really come through as guides per se. It was like this connection to my higher self. Like that is what started it all spiritually for me, was feeling like I have a teacher that I'm talking to like all the time. And there were definitely periods in my life where it was stronger and weaker, depending on if I was paying attention and doing as it said or not. But my own resistance. But that was really the catalyst for me with my spiritual journey, was that connection to the higher self. And I don't know exactly what sparked it, other than like I have a lot of loneliness from my childhood, and just like, especially like emotional loneliness, like not so much physical loneliness, but just this overwhelming feeling that no one sees me, no one understands me. And it kind of felt like everyone was too stuck in with their own shadows. I didn't know what shadows were at the time, but everyone is too stuck in their own shadows to like even see me clearly. And it just made me have this overwhelming sense of loneliness as a child. So I think that's kind of what started, like kicked off that connection with the higher self. Like, I think you're kind of brought to this point of feeling isolated and lonely and kind of lacking direction. And that's when that connection kind of kicks on. And yeah, it was anything but linear after that. I wish I could say, and then I realized all of the things of the universe and listened to all of the guidance from my guides and everything worked out magically, but it was anything but that.
Wow. Well, I feel like you're doing pretty good if you're listening to your higher self in 5th grade.
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was, in all fairness. But that's it. Looking back on it, I know that's what it was.
I see. Yeah, that's incredible. I went through so many challenges and just kind of just kept trudging on, because I was so like set in my belief that there was nothing, this is it.
Yeah.
And it was so depressing as well. Like, it was really depressing to think that this is all there is. And so might as well just revel in the ickiness of it. So
yeah, I do relate to that as well.
What else should we talk
sorry
about?
Did I cut you off? My internet's starting to lag a little bit.
Oh, no.
I do relate to what you were saying of feeling like so when I was in college a little bit, I did kind of dabble in like atheism type style thinking. I was big into the atheism debates. Were you on the internet? Like, were you paying attention to when atheism debates were like a whole thing? There was like a lot of. No, okay. I don't even remember any of their names. That's fine. I was just curious if you also had that experience, because I feel like there was like a huge like internet culture around like atheists debating Christians, and I got very interested in that. I grew up Catholic, and I never felt Catholic, although there were some components of that theology that I think impacted me psychologically. I never like was a Catholic or a Christian. And I did reject that a lot and developed a lot of cynicism and anger around that as well. But I did so as I was stepping out of that religious indoctrination component, there was a whole like atheism phase that I went through. And that did lead me to kind of think all of this spiritual nonsense is very silly and stupid. And I actually developed a little bit of like I don't want to say like a complex, but just like a fear of other people thinking that I was silly and stupid.
Oh,
and
that's blood. I think that's what it stems from.
Oh yeah. Yes. Just like that
Definitely.
rejection. And like also there have been times in the past where I had shared like some of my spiritual like quirks and just was rejected and shut down. And
Mhm.
so you develop this outer shell to kind of distance yourself from that rejection. And that's what led
Right.
me to believe, you know what, it's all stupid. I'm actually smarter than all of this. All the people that believe all of this spiritual stuff they can't prove, they're so stupid. I'm so much better than them. And like that became like a huge part of my identity for a while.
Yeah. How did you kind of get out of that?
Oh gosh. Well, the Morgan had a lot to do with it. Also, I do want to say there was this moment of like, hey, I just feel gross, especially as I was coming out of the atheism and I started to let myself kind of dabble into witchcraft. I still like forced myself to only talk about things I could prove for a while because I was nervous of getting it wrong, of
Mhm.
being judged, of being
Right.
criticized. My fight or flight gets activated when I am scared about getting criticized. Like my body still gets stuck in like that
Absolutely.
like 15-year-old Sarah when I feel like I'm being criticized. So that's something I'm working on as well. But where was I going with that? Oh, how did I get myself out of it? So I just realized it was boring. I was like,
Yeah.
honestly, this is boring. Like, what am I going to sit here and argue with people that believe there's more to life, but I don't think there's more to life, and I'm just going to be mad about that forever? Like, what are
Right.
we doing here? Um, yeah. So I like touched into or dabbled in some witchcraft stuff when I was like in my college years and let myself have fun. It was a practice of letting my hair down and like letting myself experiment and try new things. And thank you for having me reflect on this, by the way, because I've come so far in
Yeah.
that, and it's been a really long time
Same.
since I remembered. Like, no, there was a time where I fully rejected anything having to do with spirituality.
Yeah. Well, it's a process for everyone. And I feel like witchcraft is kind of like baby stepping stone to like oracle cards and angels
Mm,
and or maybe they're kind of on the same level, but like yeah, I've always been very interested in witchcraft as well. I was kind of looked at it and I was like, that's a really cool thing, but it's not for me
yeah.
after doing a lot of shadow work, it was because I didn't feel like I had the magic. Like I didn't feel
Mm,
like I had it. So
hmm.
like it's not for me. It's for other people. Psychics are really interesting. I was obsessed with like ghosts and ley lines and Bigfoot and like
Yeah.
cryptids and stuff like that when I was a kid, but for some reason like I couldn't do it. It was like everybody
Ooh.
else had the magic, but it wasn't for me. And so I do
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of where a lot of that cynicism, that crusty
Mhm.
shell that people form around themselves, it all stems from like, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. I'm just not enough. And so I'm going to put this away and pretend I'm better than that or smarter than that or
Yep.
something. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I love how witchcraft has been, so like put into the bad category, but it's actually just working with universal laws and working
Mhm.
with Gaia, and it's so natural. Like the minute I started doing that, it felt really intuitive, and I started using a pendulum and started, doing the little white witch spells and stuff like that. And it just felt really fun. Like you said, like it's kind of like another way of like opening up and
Yeah. And
exploring.
also, like what you said with connecting to the inner child, right? Like there's this whole part of you that wants to connect spiritually, that it's just out of fear of rejection and actual rejection that we've experienced, it's like it gets shoved to the wayside. And so
Mhm.
things like, I've always loved cards, and I was destined to be a tarot card reader because I was obsessed with Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh card, all the cards I was obsessed with
Yeah.
as a child. So it was like literally written in the cards for me. Um, but it's just like
Wow.
one of those things beyond the fact that like I have a deep respect for the art and the practice of the tarot. But in the beginning, it was just like, here are these fun, pretty cards that are helping me open something that I've been repressing for a very long time. And I think there's a lot of different components of witchcraft. Like a lot of it is very old, deep, sacred knowledge that used to be passed down through the generations that we've lost. And so there is a very like serious ancestral component to many of the practices, but there is also an element of like it has become more trendy on the internet. More people are talking about it. It's more accessible than it used to be. And I view that all as a positive thing because it's helping people use muscles that they haven't used in a really long time. And I think that's great.
Yeah. And, I feel like almost every single one of us has been here so many times that they've
Mm-hmm.
probably lived at least one life where they've lived in accordance to those universal laws. And so it just feels intuitive for them. It feels
Yeah.
natural on a certain level. So, yeah, I've used tarot cards before, but I've kind of struggled with I've had a couple different people kind of show me the ropes, and one of them was just like, "Well, use the guidebook. The guidebook tells you
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
7 of Swords means you're trying to get away with something. 3 Cups means celebration." But then I had another friend who was telling me his interpretations, and he was like, "It's completely up to you. So you can interpret whatever you want."
Hmm.
And that kind of
Confuse
I
you?
feel kind of embarrassed talking about this, but I
That's
felt
okay.
like it was more of that shadow of like, I don't have the magic. I don't have it. So I
Yeah.
kind of just I was like, well, I don't want to do this. I think it was my teen. My teen was like, this is dumb anyway. I don't want to do this. So I
Hmm.
put it away and I haven't really used them too much. But I
Yeah.
love tarot cards. I love
They're
them.
so
There's just
beautiful.
the art. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes. There's
for
some decks
sure.
that I have that are like, I just like looking at you. I don't actually like reading this one. Um, but to kind of like what you were talking about. So I'm a huge fan of using the guidebook. I still use the guidebook all of the time.
Mhm.
There's actually, I use the Lightseers Tarot most of the time.
Mm.
And the creator of that, I think her name is Chris Ann. I think I might be wrong on that. But she wrote a whole guide, like a very long guidebook on it, and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeously illustrated and very detailed. So I'm a huge advocate of constantly checking the guidebook. But also, your other friend that was like, you can just like it's literally whatever you see. That also
Mhm.
works because a lot of times the way I think of the tarot cards is it's basically like you're handing your spirit guides a deck of cards, and you're like, hey, I want you guys to give me insight on something. Use the cards and do your best. And sometimes there's not going to be a perfect card for them to actually tell you what they want to say. So you do have to get really interpretive of like, well, this an orange cup means something to me very specific, but that's not in the guidebook. And so like it is very customizable and yeah, there's no wrong way to do it in my opinion.
I so I watched that Gemini full moon, was it full moon video that you did the other day?
Full moon. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, I watched it last night and those messages resonated so strongly with me. All of them because I've been
Good.
seeing yeah, oh geez, I've been seeing so many mirrors. I feel like I'm
Hmm.
like in a hall of mirrors. Like I started a new job and I'm getting triggered by some coworkers and I'm seeing the mirrors within them that reflect an older version of me.
Mm,
And I've been very nostalgic. Like, and I've had a
yes.
couple of people like send me old photos of myself from when I was in my 20s, like just out of
Hmm.
nowhere. Just all of this like old kind of revision and reflection on like you said, like how far you've come, you
Yeah.
know.
Yes. There's
And
something. I mean, with the obviously with these universal energies, they tend to be like common experiences that people had. But we got smacked in the face with nostalgia as a collective over the past like month and a half, and it's like palpable. Like it's like I'm so glad you said that because I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, I know these are the messages I'm getting, but it's too perfect. Like literally the exact situations my guides are telling me about are happening. So it's good to hear you confirm that you are also experiencing that.
yeah,
Because yeah, Hall of Mirrors is a great way to say it. Another way my guides have been saying it is like we're triggering each other like crazy right now.
oh
All
yeah,
of
oh
these
yeah.
old patterns, old karmic contracts, they're being called up to question, called into review, and there's just it's happening rapid fire right now in it's palpable. Like you can feel it happening.
And all of this is coming up for us to clear. And I feel
Hmm.
like once you realize it and you realize what you're seeing, you kind of accept it, you send it love or whatever you feel you need to do. That's kind of what clears it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's also like just so much to learn. Like I've been learning so much about the way that my subconscious brain works over the past couple of years that, you know, you get to this place where you, especially if you have a shadow work practice, and this gets a little ego-y, but you can get to a place where like, I know myself. Like I know the main shadows, you know, I know what's going on, I know what we're working on. And then you'll experience something, usually like a relationship dynamic, a situation, a mirror, and it's like, oh my god, no, I didn't even see this coming. Like I didn't even remotely know that this was buried in my subconscious. I had that with my inner critic this year. It was a big year of the inner critic for me. I did not realize how much I was constantly criticizing myself, like in the subconscious of my brain, just all the time, just 24/7. And I had no idea what was going on.
So what does that look like for you?
So, well, I know where it comes from. This was a pretty prevalent theme. I try not to tell other people's stories, so I keep it vague with things that I've experienced in the past. But in my family dynamic, there was a lot of criticism, a lot of
Mm.
hyper analyzing behaviors, and kind of almost, I want like a stalking feeling, like a I'm being watched, I'm being picked apart. That level of
Another
criticism.
form of control through
Oh yes,
micromanaging.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And man, I could talk about this for hours. I don't think it was intentional. I think it was a lack of emotional intelligence and an inability to regulate themselves that led this behavior to happen. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was a constant theme for me, just like constantly. So my subconscious learned all of that and adopted all of that, like that way of looking at life, of over analyzing, criticizing, picking ideas apart. And it's just running in the background.
Mhm.
Like there are times where it really gets triggered when I film videos of I almost even have to talk to myself a little bit of like, hey, I know you're scared to do this, because it's the fear. It's fear. It's trying to me
Still,
that it
that's
doesn't.
you've done tons of
Oh yeah.
videos and you still feel it.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. Oh yeah. All the
Okay.
time. All the time. And yeah, it usually actually takes me a couple of takes when I first get started to like do the intro, because I'm all in my head of second guessing. Yeah. Yeah, it's something
Okay.
I've been working on it a lot. I've made a lot of progress on it. But it is something that still runs in the background. The other thing that happens with shadow work is something is happening that you don't know about, and then you become aware of it, and then it's all you can see. So sometimes the
Yeah.
shadow gets louder
Right.
before it gets quieter, and you're like, but I'm healing, so like why is this worse now than it was before? And the answer is you didn't notice it before. So there were times
Yeah.
when I tried to start a YouTube channel in my 20s. I mean, I tried like 7 times
Hmm.
before I actually ended up doing it, I never actually published a single video. I would sit down and try and film and just stare at myself in the viewfinder and be like, I hate everything about this. I have nothing to say, and I'm done. And it was all the inner
I can
critic.
relate.
So
Yeah.
so it was stopping me from doing so much. And now I'm noticing it more, so it's louder and it seems more prevalent. But all that is I'm seeing something that I was blinded to before that
Mhm.
was always there.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I see it and I give it some love, I send it
Mm.
some love. I actually open up my heart chakra and I'm like, I love you, critic. I love you. Come on. It's
Yeah.
it's okay. We can do
Hmm.
this. I feel like that does so much to help transmute that energy. And after a
Hmm.
while, I mean, it might take a while, but it really lessens. Like it lessens
Yeah.
its grip. It really does, and it gets
That's a
easier. So
really that's a really good idea. I
that's
try
what
to
Asia
talk.
taught me. I'll
Really?
give her credit for that. Yeah, give it all love. It all deserves love.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I need to, one thing I'm going to work on next year, a goal of mine is to be like more somatic in my healing, because I'm very like in my head, like cerebral. And I think it's a strength, not a weakness. But I also want to incorporate more like body healing as well. And like actually moving the body, moving the energy through the body. So it's not just happening all up here. So that's a
Yeah.
really good idea about the heart space there, and using that to send love, like actually visualizing that.
Um, well, speaking about like the body and the different subtle bodies and everything, do you have any practices that you do to like stabilize, ground, align, balance, all
Mhm.
that sort of good stuff?
Yeah, so it's very uncommon, I feel like, for the, well, I don't know, maybe I'm Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I lift weights. I'm like huge into. I actually used to be a
Oh, you're
competitive
one of
bodybuilder.
those.
Yes, I
Awesome.
am one of
I
those.
know I know a whole group of people that that's how
Really?
they move. Yes, that's how they move through their density is they go
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
they yeah, and it's not in a, I guess you would say like a punishing sort of like tearing
No.
down your body sort of way. It's all it's very interesting. It's like all with this like inner multidimensional knowing. It's like their higher selves come in and they're like,
Yes.
okay, we're going to transmute a ton of stuff by pumping
Hmm.
iron and running. And yeah, it's amazing for that.
It is.
Really.
And it's amazing for all kinds of emotional transmutation. Like obviously anger, but also grief. I've been in the gym. Sometimes I put my hood up and I'm like tearing up a little bit. I think the people in the gym
Oh
are
yeah.
like, she's in here battling demons. Like we're not going to talk to her. I don't know what's going on. And it is. So I used to be a competitive bodybuilder when I was in my teens and early 20s. And so I did
Wow.
it so often that I did it so often that it's like a flow state now. So now I don't really
Yeah.
have to think about it when I'm doing it. And it's truly like a reconnection to my body. There's also something, and I'm going to butcher this because I am not a scientist, but there is something with like squeezing the muscles and using your muscles that is releasing some sort of process in the body to help alleviate like depression and lower states of mood. So it's very fascinating. And
Dopamine and
also,
serotonin, right?
yes, I think so. I don't fully know the chemicals themselves, but yeah, it's something to that effect.
And adrenaline, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow,
And it
that's
feels
so
great.
cool.
Yeah.
You must be
Yeah.
strong. We should
Yeah.
arm
I love
wrestle
it.
sometime.
I don't know if I could win an arm wrestling match. I am unfortunately one of those gym girls that does legs way too often. That's
Mhm.
kind of like a trope in the gym. But I do also lift upper body as well. And yeah, it just feels great. It feels great. I feel very in my element. And like you said, it's not about punishing the body. It's truly like this feels amazing. I love doing this kind of feeling.
Yeah, I've really been called lately, like I'll be waking up in the morning and having
Mm.
dreams of being at the gym. So I really, dude, I have to go.
Yeah.
I have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Go for it.
yeah, for me, my kind of moving meditation stuff is I go out in the woods, I go walk around with my dogs. It's very like low impact and kind of, it's meditative and everything, but like there really is nothing like pumping some iron. I used to
Hmm.
go to the gym quite a bit in Seattle and I would when it back when I lived there and I would lift weights a lot, but I don't know, something I eventually lost interest in it. And now
Yeah.
I just feel like a big wet noodle. I kind of have to get it together.
Yeah,
But
but walks are great too. I do a lot of like channeling when I walk as well, unintentionally.
oh
It just kind of
yeah.
happens. I have like a stream of consciousness text message to myself that when I'm
Hmm.
walking as I'm getting stuff, I'll like send myself text messages of things that I'm learning while I'm out for a walk. And it's really funny if you just like picked up my phone and looked at it, it's so disjointed and like crazy. But it's a really effective way to channel. In fact, if any of the audience is like wanting to talk to their guides more, I always recommend people go for a walk. There's something about especially being out in nature, but also like the bilateral movement of your eyes that kind of helps you get into a state of mind where you're able to connect a lot easier. And oh my
Oh,
god, sometimes I wish I could film while I was walking. I would probably be out of breath and really sweaty and like probably not do a good job doing it, but I get my clearest downloads when I'm out walking.
oh, that's so cool.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk a little bit about your channeling, like your process.
Yeah.
How did you discuss like how did it happen?
Hmm.
Yeah,
So I started when I was younger, talking to myself, but it wasn't.
I love to talk to myself.
Yes, I'm a huge advocate for talking to yourself also. But what it was and it took me a while to admit this to myself because from an outsider's perspective, this sounds slightly conceited, but it just I knew more than I should have known is what it comes down to. I was talking to myself, but the voice that was kind of responding to the questions that I had was wise beyond my years, like wiser than I
Mm.
should have been at that age, and knew more, like had more access to more information. Almost like, and I do kind of wonder if this is what's happening, almost like me now was talking younger Sarah through the things that she experienced. And
Wow.
I do have this theory with like time, like all of our lifetimes and all of our like it's all happening right now. So there is kind of this
Mhm.
feeling that I have like my guides might actually be me in a different incarnation. It's probably probably a whole conversation for another time, because we probably lose ourselves in that. But I started channeling when I was young. Like I had access to information I shouldn't have. And I also developed like a really close bond with that voice as well. And I don't know, it came through the strongest when I was in distress. So when I was going through like really difficult experiences in my youth, it was almost like this big sister version of myself that was kind of coming through. And I would be really relaxed. I'm assuming I was kind of entering a trance state, although it wasn't intentional. I would just get really relaxed, really calm, and I would start talking about everything I would go through. And then this voice through me, it sounded like me. I was in full control of myself, but it would just kind of respond, soothe me, talk me through it, and provide a lot of wisdom also for what I was going through. So that's how it started. I ignored it when I was a teenager because I was too cool for all that. And then in my mid 20s is when I started developing a relationship with the Morrigan. And that's when I really started to kind of share channeled messages on YouTube as well, was in my late 20s. And that took me a lot to get over imposter syndrome and fear. What was great with the Morrigan with channeling was there was this feeling that I have to do this. Like it's bigger than me. The messages she wants to share with the collective, it's almost like one of those things where it's like, I know you're scared to do this, to share this, but like, I need you to, and I'm a very big and imposing presence. So like, you're going to do it, that kind of thing. So she helped me get out of my comfort zone because I felt this tremendous sense of duty in like a sacred, like spiritual warrior kind of capacity. And I loved it also. It felt really good. It was not something I was forcing myself to do and I didn't like it. It felt really good, really aligned, but there was this huge feeling of like mission and purpose behind it as well. And then now I'm channeling for Arianrhod, who that name comes from Welsh mythology, by the way, but the being herself. Yeah. So there is a goddess mythology that's associated with Arianrhod. It's actually interesting. So quick deviation. The name Arianrhod in Welsh mythology means goddess of the silver wheel. And it's kind of speculated that that might be, a goddess of the moon, the full moon, the silver wheel. I think it's a spaceship. Personally, I'm totally probably just projecting my own experiences onto that, and I have no historical proof to back that up whatsoever. But being that I'm working with a being that I feel very, very strongly is Andromedan, is intergalactic, and she gave me the name Arianrhod. Like that was also not up for question. I do wonder if the silver wheel from Welsh mythology was a spaceship. Just a speculation on my end. But when I channel her, that takes a lot of work. I have to get into a meditative state, and it just takes a lot more energy out of me because she's not here on this planet. She's elsewhere. So there is quite a bit of trance work. One of my favorite ways to get into a trance state, by the way, is to meditate with my eyes open. Have you ever done this before?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so weird. I'll meditate, and even if I'm, blinking regularly, if I look at a spot for too long, it'll get really dim and the colors will change and stuff. I don't know if that happens for you, but yeah.
Yeah. My eyes like defocus. So I have a picture of Arianrhod on my altar. And so I will make eye contact with that photo. And usually I'm also listening to music as well. Sometimes in silence, it depends. But I keep my eyes open and I focus on her eyes. And that's when I kind of slip into that trance state a lot easier.
Okay. That's funny because I have an Arcturian on my altar right now.
Do you? Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's pretty great. He was channeled sculpture that somebody made. I can't remember. It was a while back, but yeah, you can feel the energy coming off of him. Is there a difference for you when you're connecting with like really high frequency beings? Like, do you get ungrounded? Do you feel dizzy? Does anything like that happen?
So whenever I'm done filming a channeling, I like need a minute. Like I do get a little woozy. I do get a little dizzy. I usually get very sweaty. There's this voice in my head, like probably just higher wisdom being like, go outside, just take a second. And it's a good feeling, but it is a very overwhelming feeling as well. There is a very distinct like presence that I feel, and it helps to clarify that like, oh no, like this was coming from an additional source.
Wow. That is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I have I have an Andromedan aspect as well, and I haven't connected with them in a very long time. I connected this morning, and it was so great. It
Did
felt
you?
so good. Yeah, and it was way easier than it was before. I feel like I've kind of dumped a lot of, garbage and
Mm-hmm.
kind of raised my frequency enough so that it's not that hard to
Yeah.
connect anymore. But
Good.
yeah, there
No,
was
it's
one
tough.
time I was back. What's that?
It's tough. Whenever you have those moments where you feel disconnected, it hurts. It does not feel good.
Oh yeah, no, that's not fun. I connected a couple of times with these like white lions that,
Mm,
oh my gosh, I would see them in my mind's eye and I would connect with them. And like, even if I was grounded, I almost threw up one time. It was
mm.
so intense. Like I feel like the space between the dimensions was so great that it only lasted for a little while, but it was very
Yeah.
intense. So,
Interesting. One thing I do think is having, also, I should mention, when you were talking about having Andromedan ties, my left ear started ringing a little bit. And
mhm.
Ariane Rod stands on my left side. She'll grab, when I know she wants something or when she's here, she grabs my left shoulder. So I just thought that was interesting. A little
Oh,
synchronicity
that's
there.
awesome. Yeah.
But one thing I do think that's happening is our bodies, and I'm far from the only person that's been talking about this, but our bodies are being changed to be able to handle higher states of consciousness in this shift that we're going through. And so I do always wonder, like, because it's so difficult. It's like one of those things where, like, when you change something about your body and then you look at yourself in the mirror, you look the same way that you've always looked, right? Like it takes a really long time for you to be able to start seeing changes. And I wonder if there's something similar happening with like the physical upgrades that we've been experiencing, of like, how much are we changing that we just aren't even aware of at this current point?
Yeah, I would want like I'm almost I would almost be nervous to get an MRI because I feel
Yeah.
like my my brain would just be so weird.
Yeah.
They would just be like, "What? How are you walking? Like, what is
Hmm.
going on with your brain? Your pineal gland is like the size of a grapefruit." Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. It would be interesting to. I mean, I'm sure we'll figure this out eventually. But like, how do you? Speaking of like ascension symptoms, and
Mm.
I don't really like to use that term, but how are you taking care of your body? How are you reacting to the influx of plasma light, the influx of
Hmm.
protons, the Schumann? Like, are you getting more sensitive to it?
Oh my God, yes. The other night, before we got the X class flare, it was like 2 or 3 nights ago. I had
Yeah.
a dream. I was having the most vivid dreams. And one of the dreams that I had was that I was like, I looked up in the sky, I saw a solar flare, which I know you can't see them, but in the dream, I saw the solar flare. And then I checked the app on my phone and I was like, whoa, we just had an X class flare. And then I woke up and a couple hours went by and I checked my phone and I was like, oh, we had an X class flare. So, yes, it's definitely one of those things where, and I try not to check it too often because what I don't want to happen is check it, see that we had a flare. Now I have a headache, right? I don't want it to work that way. I want it to go the opposite, where I'm like, gee, I keep getting headaches. I wonder what's going on. And then I look at the app. So I'm trying not to be too diligent about it. But I am noticing I'm getting way more sensitive to those types of energies. And there's something so helpful. I really appreciate the YouTubers and the people on social media that are talking about the flares and are giving regular updates, because it helps you understand what's going on. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can be like, listen, I'm eating well, I'm resting well, I'm drinking enough water. What is going on? Like, why do I still feel a little off, a little
Mhm.
strange? Something's going on. I can't put my finger on it. So it is helpful to understand that, like, no, the sun is doing things, and like the sun really impacts this planet in a way that I think we don't really pay attention to very often.
No, I don't think we have any clue really.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's so multifaceted, and I mean, I feel like I've heard this from other people, but I also feel like this resonates with me. I do feel like a lot of the the flares kind of spark off timeline jumps.
Mm.
And so I think there's collective timeline jumps, and there's individual ones, like just like crazy lately. And
Yeah.
the Schumann resonance I've noticed, because I've done pretty much the same thing that you have. I'll wake up and I will just feel like I got hit by a truck,
Mm-hmm.
and like almost to the point of like crazy vertigo where you can't walk straight, and just all of these very strange things happening. And I'll notice that the Schumann resonance had a huge
Spike.
blast, or
Yep.
that, yeah, or that there's like geomagnetic storms or whatever. So it's like it's not always you. Isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? Most of the time it is, but there are external factors as well going
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely. And it's just helpful to have that information. I noticed you said you didn't like to use the phrase ascension symptoms. If you don't mind, why is that? I'm just curious.
Just buzzwords
Yeah.
like you were
Mm-hmm.
mentioning earlier. There's a lot. Um, like I was saying, I feel like a lot of the spiritual community, the information has been kind of co-opted a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, and um, kind of perpetuates fear and separation. And for some reason, I feel like ascension symptoms kind of plays into that almost. It's almost like a sickness or something. But I
Yeah.
mean,
I get that.
that might just be more belief systems that I need to work through as well. I could
No,
just be projecting.
I totally get that. I think you're right. I think there is, especially like the concept of the collective shift, and I saw this a lot with like the splitting of the two different
Oh yeah.
paths, the two different planets. And there's a tendency to like oversimplify those things. There's so much truth in it, which this gets frustrating because I went through a whole phase where I was like, none of this is real. This is all BS, just because some people were talking about it in a way that I was like, I don't know about all this. And so
Mhm.
there's like so much truth in it, but there's also so much fear mongering in it as well. And
Yeah.
like kind of threading that needle. And it is tough. It's tough because it's like, what words do I use? If I can't use those words because certain people have made them into scary things, then what words do I use? How do I do this? So there's like a
Well, I mean,
line to walk.
I guess it's your choice. You could take them back,
Yeah.
or you could reframe it
Hmm.
and try try to look, I don't know, kind of invert it, turn that frown upside down.
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
know. I
Yeah.
just remember. Oh, go ahead.
I have just been using them, especially like the terms like star seed and light worker. I have just been using them because I'm
Mhm.
like, this is the closest. This is the closest to what I have. But there are
Sure.
times where, especially like when Ariane is giving me information, she's like, you can use this word, but also we need to clarify a couple things in so doing, just so that everyone knows we're on the
Oh,
same page.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I had a couple of people that I was associated with a while back that were really into like the power of your words, speaking spells, stuff like
Hmm.
that. And it did give me a sense that, yeah, language has been manipulated, and um, you should really think more, feel more, be more conscious of the words that you use.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of tiptoeing around phrases. I wouldn't use certain phrases or whatever. But then I had the same friend who told me about the tarot cards, how I can interpret them however I want. He was like, just, you don't take back, this is all fear. This is all fear. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
play into that. So I was like, wow, you know what? You're right. You're
I like
absolutely
this
right.
friend of yours. I don't know who it is, but
Oh,
I
he's
like their
great.
vibe. Yeah.
He's a great
Yeah.
guy. So,
Oh, awesome.
um, yeah, I don't know, what were we talking about before? Oh, well, yeah, I mean, gosh, the light worker movement, or the new age spiritual community,
Hmm.
it really, 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 I'm so glad that kind of, I'm actually really grateful for everything that happened in 2020, because I would not be the person that I am today without that
Yeah.
period of time
Hmm.
to sit and reflect, and to do a lot of this work. But at the same time, I feel like so many people at the same time kind of this process started happening with them, and they were all very vulnerable and seeking answers, seeking, you know, just in general, just seeking like, what's happening to me? Why is this? Why am I having these thoughts? And yeah, YouTube. Oof,
It is a very interesting place. It
it's
is.
been a
I've
huge
gone
lesson
through.
in discernment.
Oh, yes, discernment. You know what my guides have taught me with discernment? I didn't realize I was doing this. So sometimes I'll be scrolling. This is especially true for like short form content where you're just like scrolling through. Like when you feel that feeling of like something's not for you, what I was doing was I wasn't letting myself feel that unless I could justify it and explain it. So I'd be like, oh, I don't like this. But then I would sit there and go, well, do I not like it because I'm projecting, which may be true. But my guides stepped in and they were like, listen, when it comes to the internet, just it's not for you, move on. It's not for you, move on. It's not for you. Like you don't have to spend all this time psychoanalyzing why something isn't for you because you're consuming all of your bandwidth. Like focus on the things that are for you instead of fixating and needing to understand and pathologize all of these things that you don't agree with. Just let it go. Not for you. Move on.
Oh, that is such good advice because I go down so many rabbit holes. Just like, is this a projection? Is this stuff that I need to work on as shadow work? Is this, is this that? And yeah, you could spend half your day just.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So the other thing they told me is that, so when we think about like, this is for me, like this is a lesson for me to learn, like a mirror projection type situation. If it comes up in the physical world, it's probably for you. Like if you have an interaction in person or like you have a situation that you're facing in the physical world, it's probably for you. But if it's on the internet, a lot of that stuff is not for you and you got to just move. It's almost like they function like different dimensions. Like the physical tangible world is like the 3D matrix that we talk about. And like, that's where our karmic contracts and lessons are playing out. The internet is almost like a whole separate dimension where it's not playing by the same rules as the physical world.
Jeez.
I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's totally changed how I interact with the internet. Like completely revolutionized it.
I was going to ask you, so like, do you do any like clearing protocols or anything like that after your videos?
Oh, you mean like a blessing or like an energetic purifying? I should do that. I feel like I should have been doing that the whole time. You know what I do?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah. Before I post it, this is something I've started doing more recently. When I post, I do say a little prayer that asking that this just be as helpful as it can be for whoever needs it. And then I kind of let it go. And something else my guides have been trying to get me to do is don't look at the analytics. Just never, preferably never. But if you could force yourself to like not do it for a week and just see what you feel and just like, doesn't matter the views, doesn't matter the comments, doesn't matter. None of that matters. Just like say what you want to say what you believe in, put it out there and hope that it's, say a prayer that it's helpful for those that need it and then move on. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Wow. That's a really great lesson. I mean, I haven't, honestly, to tell you the truth, when I first started the channel, I didn't even know what any of that stuff was. So I didn't really look at it. But yeah. So okay, I have a couple more questions. How long do you want to go? Do you have places to
it is only 5:00. My brain thinks because it's dark out, of course. So my brain is like, it's 9:30, but it's only 5. So no, I'm totally good.
Okay, I'll ask you a few more questions. So, okay, I'll give you my real life scenario right now. So, along with this podcast, I'm also launching a healing practice. And so I'm kind of navigating this whole, like, how do you promote yourself? First of all, how do you promote yourself without feeling like you're being inauthentic? Or like kind of like almost sleazy car salesman sort of energy. You know what I mean? Like I'm not, I started these social media accounts just for the practice. And I really am not enjoying the process of like,
marketing
I do enjoy the process of making videos and stuff, but not of like, tightly edited, sped up stuff that's like, buy my stuff, you know what I mean?
Yes, 100%.
How are you navigating this?
So I know short form content, I feel like is what's causing the most difficulty. And even also for the audience, if you're not making content, like there is just this overwhelming sense of like, it's not genuine. Like some people that do short form
Yes.
content, they do nail it. They are genuine. I'm like, whoa. But when I try and do it, who is this girl? I think it's like, especially I like, you're probably like this too, because you like doing podcasts, right? So you're probably more long-winded. You probably like really getting into an idea and really like talking about it. And the short form content just feels like, how am I going to say what I want to say that quickly? I can't do it. So what I found is if you film a longer video, and there are AI editors that you can use, I think they're free or they're a little bit per month. I'll email you the one that I use if you're interested.
Oh, okay.
And they'll take your whole video. I think you can do up to like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. They'll take the whole video, AI will scan it, and they'll make the little short form content, little things for you. So they'll take a soundbite where you have a complete thought, and somehow the AI gets it right. I don't know how. And it spits out these like little 1-minute videos. So that's how I've been doing that. Because you do, unfortunately, if you want to grow, you do have to, unfortunately, like dabble in short form content.
Yeah.
And I hate doing it. I can't do it. If I'm going to talk, it's going to be for at least 10 minutes.
Lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, when I first started out, here's what I did. I made some flyers, some physical flyers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, even looking, this is just a few months ago, but I was like, I honestly thought that would work. And I'm like, stapling up my posters all around town and like getting zero responses and feeling like I was doing something wrong and like, what's wrong? Is this more shadow work? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's something that I'm thinking about because I honestly know that this is my path. This is my purpose. I'm here. I am a healer this is this is what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But also this feeling of just kind of having to sell yourself and promote yourself. I don't know. I know it is more shadow work that I'm processing right now, but like something about it just feels kind of icky.
Yeah. Well, and I think also what it is we watch other people promote themselves, and maybe for them it is really like authentic to be really bubbly and like, here's what I do and like, yay. And then, but it's not authentic for you. So you feel like you have to act like them while you're doing your promotion.
Yes.
And then that's what feels fake about it. So, and honestly, you're going to be for who you are for. Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And so you like the people that are for you are for you, and the ones that aren't. So the best thing you can do is when you are promoting yourself or talking about yourself is to be authentic to who you are. The other thing I've noticed is that I've gone through a lot of versions of who I am, and I've had a very similar feeling of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But the version of me that started doing it, that thought, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, she wasn't ready, like not even close.
Oh yeah.
And I also do kind of keep in the back of my head of like, who am I going to be 10 years from now? And like, how much more ready is she? Like, right. So you go through this evolution, kind of doing this work. And so I always just kind of keep that in mind of like, listen, I trust my guides. I trust my path. I'm just going to follow it where it leads me. And whatever ends up happening is what ends up happening. Because even though I want, X, Y, and Z really, really bad, the best use of this lifetime is to follow the path that's in front of me. So if I'm doing that, if I'm making use of that at the end of this incarnation, I'll look back and be like, you nailed it. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. This is what we sent you for. And so yeah, it's tough because our egos are like, I want this though, but I want it this way and I want to do it that way. And sometimes we live whole lifetimes completely missing the greater mission that we came here for because of it.
Definitely. Well, and also like when your guides tell you that you're a healer, that has so many different definitions really, depending on who you are and what you do. I mean, just going to the grocery store and emanating out your light field to people could be considered healing. You know what I mean? Having a conversation with somebody, like it's not always get on TikTok and make your videos and start up a healing business, but for some people that is. So, yeah, my job that I got an actual job a couple of months ago, and I'm feeling so fulfilled in doing it. And I'm working with I'm working in an adult foster home and working with adults with developmental disabilities. And I'm having fun, and I feel like I'm, like I'm doing grid work like at the house, and I feel like
Yeah.
I'm really making a difference. And I mean, yeah, don't get down on yourself because you have a regular job either.
No, I love
Because like
that.
you said,
And
it's all a process.
it is. It's all a process. And also, oh gosh, I don't know if you went through this phase where I was like, oh, I'm not being spiritual enough because I'm not meditating regularly enough or not pulling cards regularly enough. And it took
Oh
me
yeah.
so long to learn this, but I was like, oh no, the spiritual path is life. Like interacting with life and being a human and like going out into the world and having experiences, that is the spiritual path. So actually, some of the most spiritual people on this planet have like they're not even affiliated with any sort of spiritual path work whatsoever because like being here is the whole thing, is the whole mission.
There was something you said in that video I watched it last night. It was becoming the student of your own life. And I
Mhm.
loved that. I thought it
Yeah.
was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it
So
is. But I love that you have a like a mundane, like a career job that you love. That's one of my goals for next year. I got to get out of the corporate space. I know it's for some people and I try not to talk smack about it, but it's not for me at all and I need to do something else. So that's one of the things I'm going to work on next year.
yay.
Mhm.
Well, I guess 1:15. Should we call it?
Yeah, I'm good. It flew by. Oh, I did want to say to you, because you know that you're supposed to be a healer and you're going to do it in unseen ways because just to be vulnerable here, like I was really nervous to do this interview and this was a moment of like get out and do it. And this was a way in which you were acting as a healer for me in this moment. So I don't know
Aw.
if you knew that going into it, but you do now. Like genuinely thank you for this. And that's just an example of you being a healer, like you know you're meant to be in a way that you might not have previously thought beforehand.
Awesome. I love that. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm really glad that we got to talk about some vulnerable subjects because
Hmm.
that's shadow work right there, is just
It is.
presencing it and speaking it out loud. And yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'll end this.
Okay.
For anyone who has watched this entire episode, I thank you. Also, this is going to sound so corny, but could you please click the like or subscribe, all that stuff, because it really helps the channel. And my whole focus is to try to get this information out to people. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. And that is it. Thank you so much, Seraphina. You're awesome. And I
Yeah.
loved speaking to you.
Yeah. Thank you so
Um,
much for having me. This was awesome.
Yay! Let's end this recording. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.